Hey guys, this is Locke. In this video, I'm going to be going through, the different heroes, especially the legendary heroes, and talk about what makes them good in PvP. To start with, I'm just going to give you a brief overview of what makes a good PvP hero. I think a good PvP hero has three things going for them. The first thing is CC, they have some kind of crowd control like shock or stun or something. The second thing is they have buff removal, because immortality, that is a huge buff and pain to deal with in PvP. So if you have buff removal, that's really going to help with that. And the third thing, in my opinion, is to have some kind of survivability built in. Um, if you look at the three legendary plus heroes, Valdir, Ming Plus, and Shane, they all have these three things in different forms. Um, and because they have all three of these three things in different forms, if you have any of these three heroes, you basically always want to use them in PvP. Almost always. Like there are very, very few formations I can think of where you don't want to use any of the three, and it's probably because you have like all of them or something, and so that's why you don't want to use one of them. But most of the time, if you have them, you're probably going to be using them. Um, you can kind of see that that like he has a AoE stun, he has damage immunity which helps with his survivability, and then he has a skill here which removes buffs. So he literally has the three things that I just talked about. Um, she is very similar. She has again AoE stun, she has buff removal, and for her is this the buff removal? Yeah, and for her survivability, it's actually a little bit more niche because she doesn't have something that gives her like immunity or something. Instead, she has unstoppable. But I still see that as availability because when the match starts, everyone's casting their skills, and if you get stunned, you are stopped midway and you can't actually finish casting your skills and you can get killed. So when the match starts for her, she's actually unstoppable while she's casting. So as long as she doesn't get one shot, she's actually able to get the skill off twice, right? And have a 60% chance of stunning everybody twice, which is basically what she really needs to do. If she can get that off, you have a high chance of winning unless the enemy also has a similar setup or something. So in my opinion, like that's her availability. It's not as good as Valdur's or Shane's, but it is there, and to me, it's very powerful. Um, Shane is also has all of the three things that I just talked about. She has stun. This is a 100% chance to stun one unit. Um, Depending on what you're fighting, sometimes that may be better than 60% chance to stun everyone, or might sometimes not be as good. But she still has it, and she has this first availability, which makes her untargetable. So if she gets this off for 8 seconds, you can't actually target her. If she's the only one on the team, you have to just sit there and take damage while she's attacking you. Um, and she has buff removal as well, which is combined in this skill, which the combo cast removes buffs. And her ultimate also has buff removal, but it's hard to get ultimate offs, I find, so I'm not going to really count that. I'm mostly looking at just the three active skills, but this is why these three units are very, very good. For units like Cosette, who gives a very high single target damage, I don't think they're as good in PvP. And I can show you an example with Miss Velvet. I'm going to show you an outrageous example to make my point clear. Like if you look at her ultimate, which does like 4,000 damage, um, usually you don't really need to do 4,000 damage. Like you can probably, like you might one-shot an enemy if she just did like 1,000 damage, right? So the other 3,000 points of damage are kind of wasted. Because it's only on a single target. So instead, if this skill instead did like 1,000 damage AoE, she might kill everybody. But instead, she's only doing single target damage on one unit, and in the meantime, the other three units might kill you. So this is why, in my opinion, straight up damage without any CC is, and especially if you don't have any survivability, isn't as good for PvP. Cosette might kill one of the enemy units, but if you have, for example, Eileen Fodina, like her, she might actually kill all of them or CC all of them for 7 seconds. At the same time that Cosette is killing this one. So you can see that, this AoE CC is way better than just straight up single target damage without any CC. So that's why I'm not really giving a high priority to units that have high, especially high single target damage, because you want more than that for PvP. Um, so going down this list, I'm going to specifically talk about some units that are very good and some units that are going to be changing the meta going forward. Spike is like the meta all by himself right now, almost, because his passive immortality is just so powerful, and he's seen like everywhere from like low ranks all the way to like the top 10. He's still seen, and what makes him so good is that basically you can't really one shot him. You have to, first of all, get his HP down, and once it's down, you have to wait for immortality to go away, or you have to remove it. And removing that immortality is why buff removal is so important. That, like I said, that's one of the three things that you really want in a good PvP unit. Um, and so Spike really has like the best buff in my opinion. Not only does he have immortality, he also gets increased attack and attack speed, and he has good CC abilities while he's immortal as well. Like all of his, especially his ultimate and other skills, cause freeze. So it's all around very good. I've heard a lot of people saying that Spike falls off later on. While this is technically true, this is not because Spike gets worse. Instead, it's because more and more people farm the rage accessories. Like, let me just show you an example of this rage accessory because I have one of them. Once I can get out of there. Okay, so this accessory. So when HP is at 10% or below, similar to Spike's wording, you become immortal, your attack speed increases, attack increases, and ultimate gauge increases. This is like a even better version of Spike's passive, except you can combine this with anyone's passive, right? So I can put this on, somebody, like, I don't need to waste a passive slot just for this. I'm already getting this, and I'm getting some other passive as well. Like I can put it with Fodina, for example, and give everybody an increased 15% attack. So everybody has 15% attack, and I still get that passive as well. So it's not really that Spike gets worse, it's that everybody has access to his passive. That's what happened in Korea. Like in the Korean server, a lot of people, they've been playing for a year, so a lot of people have like a full set of these accessories right now, and they're basically able to give everybody access to Spike's passive, and that's the reason why Spike falls out of favor, because Spike has a few things going for him. He has the passive, and then he has CC, right? And if you remove the passive from him, he just has abilities to CC. Like his buff removal isn't really that good because he doesn't wait for an enemy to use the buff first. He just casts it when he can. So he's really there for CC and passive. So if you're able to give the passive to somebody else, like you give it to Aline, she has the CC as well. So you're not, he becomes kind of like a wasted character who's only good for his CC. You want to invest in somebody else who can do more than just CC, right? At that point, so that's how the meta kind of evolves with PvP. Spike is very good right now because not a lot of people have the rage set I just talked about. More people are farming the immortality set, the revive set, instead of the rage set. So until more and more people get access to that rage set, Spike is very good because his passive is going to kind of be unique, and it'll probably be that way for a while because it seems like it's going to take a while for people to get access to this rage set. You probably want it on. You probably want four of them. If you have four of these, you might not be using Spike anymore. But to get four of these rage accessories, I don't know how long it'll take. It might take a month. It might take two. It kind of also depends on your luck as well. So yeah, I mean, Spike is very, very good right now, and he doesn't really get worse. It's just that everyone else also has access to his passive, which is why he becomes redundant, and that's why he falls off. Now, a very similar thing can be said of her as well. Her passive is also very good. Revive. When you revive, all of your skills go on cooldown. So she's actually a very good unit to fight against Spike, because a fight happens and it's one on one, and she dies. When she comes back, because her skills get all her skills are sent, all the cooldown on her skills are reset. She can cast the skill again, which removes buffs. So if Spike has immortality and he kills her, she comes back and she's able to remove the immortality with the skill and kill him. So she's actually like she has her uses, um, especially in this meta where like a lot of people are using Spike. She again becomes redundant when more and more people have access to the revive accessory, because there are other units that have the buff removal skill as well. Spike is one of them. So if you're in a fight where it's Spike against Spike and your Spike dies, he comes back with all of his skills on cooldown. He can just use the buff removal skill to kill the enemy Spike as well. So this passive is very good. Revive is very good. Spike's passive is very good. They just become redundant because people get access to them through accessories. That's why they fall off. Like I've seen ratings of both of these heroes in Korea, and they're at like B rating, and it's not that they become worse. It's just that they become redundant. Everyone else has their abilities, right? Uh, so that's I really wanted to get that point across because they're not bad heroes. They just become redundant with everyone having their with more and more people having access to their passives. Um, Now Rudy Plus is a unit that I want to spend a little bit of discussion on because he shouldn't be like I have him, but I don't really use him for PvP. The reason I don't use him for PvP is because of my whole setup. So how he works is that he will actually use the skill first, right? He doesn't use this one first. If he used this one first, I would use him more often. But he uses this skill first, and he charges into the enemy. So when he charges, everyone else has a chance to focus him and kill him. And that's what usually happens. I think he'll be a lot better going forward because he will have access to the rage accessories that I talked about. He'll have access to the revive accessories I talked about. So assume that he charges into the enemy with the skill, and everyone is focusing on him, and he pops rage, which means that he is immortal for 6 seconds or something. And while he's immortal, he uses the skill. So now, as everyone is damaging him, he also reflects all the damage. And I hope you can see where I'm going with this, right? Like he is immortal, and everyone is using all these skills on him, and he's reflecting all the damage, and they're basically killing themselves. That is way more powerful than without the rage accessory. So this is what I mean. Like there's so much to talk about PvP. I'm giving some thoughts on these heroes, but PvP is always evolving as people get access to better and better accessories. Um, so he is a good unit, but you just need a proper immortality and proper rage set to make him work. I have my rage set on somebody else who is more vital to my team. That's the reason why I'm not putting it on him. But to make him work, you really want to have that rage and immortal accessories on him to really make him shine. Um, the regular Rudy, though, I like him a lot better for the meta right now because a lot of people have started putting in buff removal. So what I use him for is when the battle starts, he actually uses this skill. Like he uses a buff and gives everybody a buff. So this usually makes the enemy Claire or the enemy Ming or whatever use their buff removal skill right away because then you have a buff, so they want to remove it. If I didn't have Rudy, if I used somebody else, like if I used the Legendary Plus Rudy, if somebody pops their immortal, like if Spike pops his immortal, it'll be removed right away from the enemy Claire because somebody has a buff, I'm going to remove it. But usually, like when the fight starts, since he already uses this buff already, I they're going to remove that buff, giving the buffs that he use afterwards, like the immortality, the rage buffs that he use, as the fight goes on, those are not removed right away because the enemy already used the buff removal. So that's why I really like Rudy, is because he casts a buff to all these units. And first of all, the buff is really nice, but I'm counting on this buff to be removed so that the buffs that they're using later, which are more powerful, aren't removed right away. And the second thing I like about him is that when he's using this buff, he stays back, forcing everyone to kind of run towards him. And like he puts a little bit of distance between him and the other DPS, so they aren't caught as much in the AOE. So I really like him for that reason. Um, Claire is somebody that I feel is going to get better and better as the game progresses. She is very useful for her buff removal and her CC as well, but especially the buff removal. She doesn't use the skill until an enemy actually has a buff, so she will save it. And as I just talked about, like Spike is very powerful for his immortality. Now imagine immortality on everybody. You want as much buff removal as possible. And as more and more people farm Rage Accessories and give immortality to everyone, she's going to become more and more powerful for removing those immortality buffs from people. So she is already a very good unit, and I see her very often in the top tiers of PvP. But I feel like she will get even more powerful as more and more people keep farming these Rage Accessories. So she's a good unit to keep a lookout for and keep in your back pocket. Um, you have to, you have to also pay attention to the team composition as well, because if they have like a Delint or somebody who can target the back line, who can target rangers, she might get killed very fast because he literally just jumps towards. No, he jumps towards support. I think it's Shane that jumps towards rangers. Yes, no, she also jumps towards support. Okay, there's somebody that jumps towards rangers, but either way, I find her like getting targeted by uh, by enemies first and gets killed. Maybe it's Ming that targets. This is kind of bothering me. Okay, maybe I'll find it later. There's somebody. Okay. Um, yeah, I don't know. I find that against enemy Delins, it says that he targets support first, but I've seen him jump all the way to the back and target uh, Claire. So I have to like she works way better if she also has access to immortality and rage accessories, so that she's able to survive that first hit. If she's able to survive that first hit and she revives and people are targeting her, she can do a lot of stuff. She can, she can CC. She has CC included in her passive that goes off every 5 seconds, and then she has buff removal, and she's just an all-around unit as long as she can survive. So as long as you have those accessories, which more and more people are going to be getting access to, she becomes like very very top tier. She would be very close to like the three units that I talked about in the beginning, the L plus units. Like she's almost at their level. She's just a little bit below, uh, but she will just be getting better and better as more people farm their accessories. Miss Velvet is like a little bit downgraded version of Shane. Um, Her CC isn't as good as Shane's because she only silences instead of stun like the Shane Plus, and she also has this skill as well, which causes stealth, which is very similar to Shane Plus. Um, she attacks rangers. That's what it is. Everyone else attacks support. She attacks rangers. But yeah, she because she is a L unit and Shane Plus is a L plus. Shane Plus's damage modifiers are just higher. Um, Shane Plus actually does better in longer fights. She's better because of her passive, and she keeps stacking attack over and over. So the longer the fight goes, Shane Plus is better. Whereas um for short fights, Miss Velvet has a higher damage potential. Um, you can combine both of them in one team as well and have both of them jump towards the back line and be stealth and wreak havoc. So that can also work. It was actually one of my viewers that gave me that idea, and I'm like, yeah, that actually could work. You have to have a strong front line, like a strong tank that absorbs your damage, and let these two go in the back and wreak havoc, and they can't be targeted. So they actually you can set up combinations like that where both of them on the same team can still work. But she is a little bit more downgraded version of Shane Plus. But still, she's a very good hero, and even for PvE, she's very powerful. I got her recently, and I've been using her in a lot of PvP content all over the place. Um, so let's go into Fodina. She was a hero that I used a lot until I got Ming. I think Ming is a direct upgrade to her. Her main thing is these AoE CCs, which is this one. So she has a 40% chance of shocking everybody in a circular range. Ming basically has a 60% chance of shocking everyone in a circular range, and Ming also has removing buffs. So I feel like Ming is just a direct upgrade to her. But still, again, both of them can work at the same time. You can put both of them in a team and have two units that cause massive CC in an area wide effect. Um, and she also has this passive which increases attack of all allies, which is also very good to have as well. I think that Eileen is one of the better like legendary units that are attuned for PvP, and she'll be relevant for a while. I mean, unless you get Ming and replace her, which is a direct upgrade, she is still, I think, rated very high even in Korea, um, and yeah, she's just a CC queen, right? She is the queen of CC, and she'll be she's just very very powerful. And I used her a lot to climb in arena, uh, and she was one of my favorite units to play in PvP. It's just that because I got a better upgrade, that's the only reason I stopped using her. But if I didn't get such an upgrade, I would still probably use her. And once I farm a rage accessory to put on her, I'm probably gonna um, remove Spike and put her instead because I still like her and I like the plus attack passive as well. And as I said, Spike becomes redundant at that point, so I'm gonna replace Spike with Eileen most likely once I farm rage accessories to give her. Now Rachel is not very good for PvP, but I still used her for a while because she was my first DPS and she was the one that I invested mostly into. But she is similar to what I just talked about, Cosette. Like she does a lot of damage. She does debuffs, but these are not CC type of debuffs. They just increase damage. Like she has like a defense reduction. She has like an increased damage received debuff. But those just basically add to your damage. They don't stop enemies. So they're not crowd control at all. They're just you know like a different kind of debuff. She's good for PvE. She's good for increasing damage on bosses, but she's not really all that good for PvP. Um, who else did I miss? Okay, Dellins is nice as well. I think he's worse than Miss Velvet when it comes to the role that he plays. He kind of jumps in the back and he tries to uh, kill people with single target damage. Um, you only need to focus on attack for him because his attacks always crit. You don't need to put any um, critical rate stuff on him at all. Um, but he doesn't really have any survivability. He just has attack. He doesn't have any buff removal. He just does one thing, and he does that one thing very well, which is attack. So Miss Velvet, he does have silence. He has a 40% chance to silence everyone in a circular range. So he has some CC. But Miss Velvet is still better because she also has availability. So where he can get pulled by Valdur and killed, for Miss Velvet, she might be able to pull off her passive. Sorry, she might be able to pull off her buff, which gives her stealth for 8 seconds, before she is pulled or CC'd or something like that, right? Um, which again increases its availability. So that's the reason why I think she is better than Dellins. That's why I would rate her better. But Dellins is still a very good single target damage dealer. I just prefer her. And also, the second part of the stealth buff is that it also gives um, increased resistances as well. So once she pops this off, it's also harder to CC her down. And this is the same for Shane as well. So once they're able to pull this stealth buff off, they are a lot more resistant to shock and stun and all kinds of other status effects. Um, did I miss anybody? I think there's only Yon Hee left. I think she could work in some teams because uh, she has stun and she has the knocking targets back. So you can potentially combine her with Claire and have both of them deal long range damage and CC. But she's not too popular in PvP because there's just other tactics that you can use. Like neither of well, she doesn't really have much availability outside of trying to CC them and knock them back. So if an enemy happens to sneak up on her, most likely she's dead. So um, I wouldn't rate her very highly, but she's not bad, and she could work in specific teams that I just mentioned about, like using her alongside Claire. But she's not really meant as a PvP unit. She's meant more of a PvE unit. Um, if you can get her ultimate off, it's almost as powerful as Spike's ultimate, but she might not last long enough to actually get the ultimate off. Whereas Spike more likely is able to last because of his passive. If you use the Rage accessory on her, maybe she might be able to last longer, but by the time you farm Rage accessories for her, most people also have similar accessories, and more people are also using buff removal units. So by that time, she's probably not going to make as much use of it anyway. So I don't know. She's not great for PvP. She's kind of average, but there are definitely way better options though. And I think that's it for all the legendary units. I think I've talked about. Oh, actually, I missed these two, Karen and Evan. Um, yeah, but aside them, I've talked about everyone else. So let me briefly touch on these two. Um, Karen can be good if you are making a very defensive team. Right now, it's a little bit harder to make a defensive team because people don't have the necessary codex buffs or plus 20 uh, defensive gear on all their units that make them hard to kill. But once they are at that stage, she has two buffs she has two skills that give you healing for all your units, and that's going to make it really hard to kill them. And if you do kill one of them, like if you kill uh, Rudy or something, she can revive them with her ultimate. Immortality is not as good on her as it is on some other units because her ultimate gets like the progress of her ultimate gets reset to zero if she dies. So you really want her for the healing and the revival. So if you have to reset her revival, then you're probably not going to be able to get a revival off at all, right? So Rage is very good on her, the Rage accessory, because it gives her immortality. But the Revive accessory is not as good on her as it is on someone else. But still, when she does come back, she will heal everyone, and so you still have to take her health down all the way. When teams become like very very resistant to damage because everybody has very high defense and damage mitigation, then she will become like top tier. I hear that there is like a defense meta going on in Korea right now, where enemies are dealing like very very low damage, and most units have like 60k health or something. At that point, yes, she becomes very useful and she becomes very top tier. But right now, for the meta that we have, she's not really that great because she will probably be killed before she does anything too significant. So for the meta that we have right now in global, she's not too strong. Um, and that leaves Evan. I really liked Evan, but I think he's just better suited for PVE than PvP. Um, he has the reflex skill, so if you are able to give him the immortality passive, like the immortality, the rage accessories, basically, he might be able to stay in the front line and take a lot of damage. But the problem is that he doesn't really have like other buffs. So the thing is, okay, so when you start using him, right, and he runs into the enemies, uses taunt, and if everybody attacks him right now and health goes to zero and he pops off the rage skill, then most likely a Claire or a Ming or someone would just remove the rage and he will die. That's not the same as with Rudy, for example, because Rudy in the very beginning will use the buff. So Claire or Ming or whatever will remove that buff, and then he has a chance to pop off immortality after. Whereas with Evan, doesn't start with the um, Evan doesn't start with this buff. He starts with this attack. So that's the difference, and I think that's the reason why, among other things, that's why I would prefer Rudy over these other tanks that don't use a buff first, because more often than not, it means that they're giving up the rage buff, which is so much more powerful. But he's not too bad as long as if you can get him to survive. If you can give him immortality and rage accessories, he is better, but still not as good as some of the others. So he's not somebody that I would rate too highly. I would rate him as average, or maybe when, yeah, probably around average for PvP. But I think he's much better suited for PvE, uh, unless you have access to L plus 3D, which not everyone has. Um, but yeah, that's all the legendary units. So this is my first video on PvP. I'll have to make more and more videos talking about them because, I mean, just covering these units took this long. And then I think I've probably lost everyone's attention span by now, so I'll have to make a different video talking about other concepts. And the meta is always evolving, so I can't just make one video and tell you always use these 4 units. This is the best setup ever. First of all, not everyone will have those exact 4 units anyway. So it's a long topic to talk about, and it's going to be, like multiple videos to actually talk about it. But I hope that this video gives you some idea of what are good PvP units and why they're good PvP units. Like I know a lot of people have seen different tier lists and they're like, oh, this is the best unit for PvP, but you might not understand why. So I hope that I was able to give you some ideas, and I was also able to kind of um, give you some direction on how the meta evolves. Like, for example, why Spike falls off, although he doesn't really fall off. It's just everyone, like, he just becomes redundant, which I talked about. But I hope that this video helps with guiding you to building a PvP team. Anyway, that's it from me for now. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you have other questions or comments, please leave me a comment below, and I will do my best to help about. Well, that's it from me. Take care, guys.